Yes, we come again to you with the urgent alerts that have to come out at this time concerning the things that are happening to us and the things that are about to happen to us. Only a few days ago, in the aftermath of the train terror, the Kaduna-Abuja train terror attack, and the demands of the terrorists who are holding on to most of the passengers, we did raise an alarm that from the tone of their demand about not wanting money, it's not money they were asking for. We then began to imagine what it could be, because if it's not money, we also said it's not anything money could buy. And we began looking back at what we already knew on the subject matter. We began to ask whether it had to do with land or our sovereignty. As we raised those questions, other things happened. And one of the victims, whom they later put on video from the place of captivity, Alhaji Kabir Muhammad Adamu, the managing director of Bank of Agriculture also, who then conveyed their demand, say the federal government knew what the demands were, and therefore, from what was in the video, they didn't name what that demand was. But when the captive got home, and people came commiserating, media people came trying to find out, he then, told everybody what he was told by his captors about what the demands were. It then turned out to confirm our worst fears, that it is the land of Nigeria. I want everybody to listen carefully so that we can understand what situation we're caught in now. The lands of Nigeria, and there's a video we can verify on YouTube titled "Ahead of 2015 Election." It was on STV. It was a 2014 interview when these deployments, when these terror merchants, mercenaries that have been hired by those who wanted to grab power by all means in 2015. That interview happened in the very period they were rampaging and doing all kinds of things. And we had gone to TV at the time to say that this is what is behind the insurgency we were seeing on an unprecedented scale at the time. People who say either they get to power or the place will be made ungovernable. People who said the blood of the baboon and that of the dog will mix up. These were the people who hired these mercenaries. El-Rufai himself told us how he went, later. We were piecing, we were bringing the pieces together to form a complete picture. That there was a promise. There was a promise to hand over the lands of Nigeria to these marauders in return for their services of providing the quantum of violence that was required to push out Goodluck Jonathan from office in 2015 electoral round. And so, if we go back to that video titled "Ahead of 2015 Elections," that's the title on YouTube. We can click it and find out today. It's on STV. We will see that it was all about election that was coming. It was all about power. So there was election that was the rendezvous, the point of exchange on the matter. And the gladiators and what they were doing to carry the day. Subsequent, we saw El-Rufai confirming on national TV how he went to 14 different countries to give these mercenaries money for whatever. They were killing people in his domain, and all he could do as sitting governor was to go to give them money. But the picture is getting clearer now that it was El-Rufai that actually interfaced with them in that contract of bringing them in. Of course, it's on behalf of his principal, who then emerged as president and commander-in-chief. These are I'm just giving our own readings of what we see. If anybody has a better account of what it is, particularly the ones who are named in that that government, I don't see anybody that they could be referring to as government than the president and commander-in-chief, who was their champion all these years. We remember when Jonathan and Ihejirika was struggling with Boko Haram. It was the same Buhari that came out to say that the attack on Boko Haram was an attack on the north. He was always their spokesman. He has not ceased being the patron of Miyetti Allah, that have been taking credit and proudly too for the murderous onslaught by Fulani herdsmen, the fourth most deadly terror group on the face of the earth. So we are connecting, we are bringing together who is playing what role in this sordid drama that has now become an existential threat to the indigenous nationalities of Nigeria across the south and middle belt, looking at this map. So this invasion we have seen, everything we have seen that came as insurgency, that came as Boko Haram, that came as Fulani herdsmen, that came as ethnic cleansing, from that 2012, 13, 14, particularly from 2015, has to do, everything we saw had to do with that promise of come and help me to power so that you can take the land for yourselves. And it is within the context of that interpretation that we begin to see the complicity of our own president and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces that was supposed to be defending us from this invasion. How did we come to the conclusion of complicity? We saw, apart from the utterances, oh, give up your land or your life, from his spokesman. We saw the defense, his minister of defense asking the states that were passing anti-open grazing laws to do away with those laws. Otherwise, they will have to contend with the cows that have to find their way. We saw the many attempts of trying to reverse the laws to recreate, to bring about open grazing. The Ruga thing that we have always talked about, all of those were attempts to fulfill that promise, to hand over the land of Nigeria to these people that will now become the permanent owners. And further on that question of complicity of our president, we saw when the borders of Nigeria were thrown open, compromising our sovereignty. And we saw the numbers that poured in terms of the Fulani that had to come from everywhere in the sub-region into our space. We saw during the COVID-19 lockdown how they were moved into the southern territories using Dangote trucks. We saw the governor in Bauchi that came to national TV to tell us that Fulani from everywhere belong to Nigeria. We saw what Pantami and the immigration people have been doing in documenting them as Nigerians, since that was the policy of the so-called federal government. I say so-called because Nigeria ceased to be a federation. The Federation of Nigeria collapsed in 1966. And all of the federal governments that have been operating in Nigeria since 1967 are illicit federal governments, because we couldn't have a federal government in the absence of a federation. We still have a country, but it is anomalous to be talking about federal government. And so we for the purpose of this broadcast, we will then say the rogue federal government that emerged from 1967 upon the collapse of the Federation of Nigeria had been the one dictating to everybody what will happen to everybody. And the Fulani, as we have seen, had hijacked that rogue federal government. So it's just a matter of mechanism for conquest. And the whole purpose of what they were doing all the while, if we look back at Ahmadu Bello's battle script of 1960, in which he was talking about the estate of their great grandfather, everybody's familiar with that now. we now begin to look at the Buhari that contested elections 4 times. It was for the purpose of, we allege that it was all for the purpose of bringing Fulani from everywhere to resettle them in our space, killing off the owners of the land, the indigenous nationalities that own the land. The title deed, the reason we are talking to our people now, so that they can see what they can do to reverse the situation, because that whole gambit has collapsed. Nobody is going to be able to hand over any land to anybody in the circumstances they've planned. If out of 8 years, 7 years gone, particularly after the attempt to smuggle the Ruga into the amendment proceedings they were having, pretending they were talking about local government autonomy. But we monitored them to the point where we busted it. Again, we hear that there are some nocturnal movements to try to smuggle that amendment to the state assemblies. Those whose lands will be taken in all those states, if those amendments sail through, are waiting for whoever will bring those amendments to state. We don't even want to bother with that, because the people who own the lands are already waiting for people who want to bring those amendments for any kind of consideration. Because it is just the formal handing over of everybody's land to these Fulani invaders. That is what that Ruga, that amendment that has to do with local government autonomy wanted to achieve. If NINAS did not block that amendment in the way we did, it would have been the point of fulfillment of that promise made before 2015 to these invaders, because they would just have called them aside to say, look, the land is now yours. Constitutionally so. The governors will have been shut out, because the local government will now become the business of federal government in terms of INEC conducting election, in terms of allocations going directly to them, and in terms of what the traditional rulers could be doing with them to set up Ruga everywhere they want to set up Ruga. It will have just been a matter of the 704 local government areas, the communities, not just the communities, the lands of the communities will have been in the hands of these Fulani invaders by the manipulation of that illicit federal government through the National Assembly, so-called because until we resolve the union dispute around the constitution under which all this are being done, we do not have a union really. People are just imposing themselves on other people. Look at this map. I want us to look at this map again. The alliance, the entire portion, the entire south and middle belt, as you see, is saying that we don't have a union. If it is the 1999 constitution that is the basis of what everybody is doing. And so the purpose of this broadcast, so that we don't lose a track, is to say that from what has now emerged, from the direct witness of the one who sat with the bandits, we can say authoritatively that our president and commander-in-chief is at the center of the terror that we have suffered across the last 10 years, so to say, because it began way before the 2015 election itself. We remember it was in 2012 or so that after the 2011 election that the same candidate Buhari had boasted that if the kind of thing that happened in 2011 happened again in the next election, that the blood of the baboon will mix with that of the monkey on the street. And we have seen it happen. If Jonathan did not, if Jonathan, who won the 2015 election, did not pick up the phone to concede at that hour, he did, it would have been a festival of blood. And it was these same elements that were procured to come to force things through that would have been the killers of everybody at the time. And the whole purpose had not changed from taking the land of the owners and becoming the new owners, so that there is a country called Nigeria still in place, but the demographics will have been altered radically. They have not given up that plan. And that's the reason we are telling everybody now what is left of their rickety plan, what is left of that plan at this time, and what those in that danger of extermination could do.
These people in their unreasonable commitment to getting back to power through this insurgency as a card to play. Unfortunately, they lost control of it, and we are now getting to where that game which they were preparing for has to be played. And in the face of all of this, that contest for which that insurgency was set up is actually going to play out in form of election. And we're saying that from what had proceeded from the two camps of those who are going into that contestation, we are assured that it is blood either way. If Party A wins, it is blood. If Party B wins, it is blood. And the country has been through it in the past, in the 1964-65 election, that was loaded on top of the unsettled constitutional situation that developed from the collapse of Western Region's constitution. And we're saying that if we go to this election, the other time we had only 3.5 million deaths in the battlefields of Biafra, arising from that stubbornness. If we go to this election today, we will have no less than 10 million people dying from the outcome. And we say, let the election be shelved and put away.
This thing could have been finished in 2 years from the time they emerged in 2015. But because we were ahead of them in telling everybody what was coming, they couldn't proceed. The National Assembly, of course, they didn't have the kind of control they now have. And of course, somebody took ill and everything got slowed down. But it now became very necessary to get another 4 years. That was what shaped the 2019 election, to get 4 years to continue the onslaught. Unfortunately for them, in that second coming, we already made a breakthrough in the international arena to tell the global community that the terror networks in the Middle East, particularly ISIS, had formed a joint venture with their local networks and the proprietors of that illicit federal government of Nigeria in what became ASWAP. And so we saw how that joint venture began to sweep through in the name of Fulani herdsmen. And the pretense then was climate change and farmers and herders, clashing. Of course, we managed in the period leading to the 2019 election, we had a breakthrough in being able to get to Washington to tell those who have been deceived by that false narrative of farmers and herders clashing. I was privileged to have led that interface with the U.S. government and other stakeholders on the global stage who were concerned with the terror that was migrating from the Middle East into the West African sub-region. And we told them what we knew about what our government was doing in bringing that terror network to reinforce them in West Africa for further engagement with the rest of the world. And it became a huge impediment to that plan of taking the land by force. We saw what El Rufai was doing in Kaduna, particularly southern Kaduna, where the owners of the land were always the ones to be arrested. When people from afar, people they could identify, Fulani, were invading them and killing them off. We saw the Adara Kingdom, the incident there. We see what's going on in northern Kaduna even now. That Muslim, indigenous, communities who are also Muslims. So it's not even a matter of jihad or anything religious. It is an ethnic campaign by the Fulani to create a homeland for their people from all over the West African and the Sahel sub-region. And so we are in that situation in which they couldn't finish, because we remember when Buhari himself said that Trump asked him in their private meeting, why are you killing Christians in your country? It was because there was an interface going on at the highest levels in the US and elsewhere, that information became available to them. The deceit of farmers and herdsmen clashing over climate change got overtaken. We saw when they sent Oshibajo to go to lie on their behalf in Washington that no killings were taking place. And Oshibajo actually came. And he got the embarrassment of his life when he was called a shameless liar to his face. That his people were being killed and he was sent to come to lie that it was not happening. And he actually boarded the plane to come to tell them, being a pastor, being a professor of law, being Yoruba, that he came to tell the America that was providing the satellite support for what the Nigerian military was using to pursue after the terrorists, were within the view of the US. So this vice president turns up, coming to say that, trying to use his credibility as pastor and Christian who is vice president to say that no killings were taking place. Of course, the US already had superior information on the subject matter. So we're just putting all this together to say that there is an orchestration, there was a suppression of the truth of what was going on, and now, as it has pleased the forces of heaven, that truth has been forced out, because these people who were not able to deliver, having played all pranks. You saw when it was grazing reserve in National Assembly, it didn't go. A grazing route, he didn't go. He came to where the Buhari wanted to resort to executive order. He wanted to bypass the National Assembly to say, by executive order, bring me all the files pre-independence about grazing reserves, and so that they can be reopened. People actually went into people's land. In Benue, I can remember, to try to begin to set up ranches. The people chased them away. And so it didn't work. They came back, national waterway, whatever. It failed because people were now alive to that attempt. Eventually, they went on, they called the same Osinbajo to go and launch national livestock, whatever they called it. Again, it failed because as long as it involved people's land that would be occupied by Fulani and their cow, nobody was going to take it. And then the state governors joined in, they managed to pass anti-open grazing laws sufficiently to at least. So now, the 8 years that will be available is in the 7th year, in fact, less than 1 year to election. That promise has not been fulfilled. It appears, this is our reading, it appears that the El-Rufai that was at the center, the people who have done their own part of delivering the violence that delivered the power, are now feeling defrauded. We are explaining this so that we who are who will be at the receiving end of that triangular fight will know exactly what's going on. They are in our forests all the way to Bonny and Badagry from where they came in the northern flank. They have weapons. We see them using them, very generously. We have also seen that nobody was challenging them in Nigeria's military. We have seen retired military officers go to national TV to say that the military of Nigeria has capacity to, circle them up and do away with them. But that their commander-in-chief is the reason why it's not happening. Captain Umar Babangida, Arise TV, and AIT, inside April of 2022, in the first week or so. So when we put all this together, we'll then see the complicity of our commander-in-chief in what is happening to us. We'll then see the options still open to all the sides. The ones who are feeling a sense of entitlement and being defrauded by the ones who promised them other people's land. Because the land that El-Rufai and his principals promised them belong to the indigenous nationalities of Nigeria. And if it is to come to kill them off and now make the lands Fulani land, that Nigeria will become Fulani country, populated by the millions of Fulani people that are bringing, by brigandage, then those who are in that danger must now wake up to the reality of their situation. Unfortunately for them, and this is where the matter will end, unfortunately for them, unless they get another extension of time, they will not be able to hand over by any mechanism the lands of Nigerian people to these third parties, these murderous invaders, these Fulani invaders. Unless they are able to get that more time, that more time can only be gotten by dragging us to election in 2023. That is the only way, that is the only mechanism left for them to find any way to maneuver, to be able to get any further than where they've gotten now in handing over anybody's land to anybody. And so, if we are stupid enough, the South and the Middle Belt, if we are stupid enough, if we are careless enough to join them in that voyage to 2023, why are we going to that election when the constitution by which the winner will govern is already makes us the slave they want us to be, is continuing to empower them to pretend they are providing governance to pretend they are taking care of us. When an issue, a sovereignty dispute has been raised within which we can solve that problem now instead of going to election, what's the purpose of this next election? Because the winner, whoever he is, will have to swear to defend and uphold and govern by that constitution. So if we grant them that extra 4 years by allowing them to take us to election, it will be entirely our making that they got the extra time they desperately need now. There's no other way they can get ahead with what they're doing if we don't grant them that extra time by going to election with them. That is what is at issue. And that election is not even the outcome of the election that is the problem. It is the fact that we are on the journey to that election even at this time. In a very recent broadcast, we talked about their plan A, which is the conquest they are driving already. Their plan B, which is to disrupt the security situation and assume martial powers to now facilitate and fast track whatever it will take to grab this land and hand over to these people. That's all they are using the election to do. And they are keeping the whole of the South and Middle Belt busy with PDP and APC, who is going to be, whose turn is going to be. The outcome of the election is already predetermined by its two platforms. They control the two platforms. They control INEC. They control the police and army that will carry the results around. So at what point are you going to be competing with them? So the politicians of the South and Middle Belt who are leading this journey to election of 2023 under this constitution are just going to lead their people to slaughter. That is what you are doing. You are going to lead your people to slaughter. If you are part of this journey to 2023, it's not about who will govern or who will win. It's about the Fulani being given extra time from where they are now to complete the conquest they're already pushing. And we felt we should come to alert everybody, and that our commander-in-chief is at the center of all that shenanigans. We drop it there.